Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley with recently operated on knee surgery Mike Ferrante, who's in the perfect position to do a podcast sitting down. Mike, how's it going?
It's good. Foot is elevated and recovery is going as expected.
Okay. When do you expect to be back on the basketball court?
I'm hoping about 3 to 4 weeks. We'll see.
Okay.
But that was the whole idea, is that the pain, you reach a point where the pain is just such that you got to go under the knife and get it figured out.
Yep. All right. Well, all right, listeners, it's way overdue for podcast for 2023. And we're going to start out with something just, I've touched on before, and that is the art of selling. And when I talk about the art of selling, what I'm really talking about is the art of listening. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. The older I get, the more I work with some of the people in our company, Riley Painting and Contracting and Riley Properties, the ability to sell is your ability to actually take your biases out and actually listen to what people are saying. And that's what I want to talk about in this short podcast. Mike, your general thoughts on that?
Oh, I am chomping at the bit for this one. I talk to my agents all the time, my real estate agents all the time. It's not about what you say. It's all about the listening and the questions you ask. And I'll be ready to elaborate on that as we go.
Good. Well, this is a real meaty topic because, we're in the process of adjusting to how the market is changing now. Post-COVID, more work at home. People are working, remotely. Technology is just zooming along. Literally, I mean, we're doing this on Zoom. So what does that tell you? Mike's in his, you're about 15 miles away, and you're sitting in your couch, and we could be doing a podcast with somebody in the Philippines, which, by the way, we do have four virtual assistants working in the Philippines. So, I mean, things are just changing left and right. And your ability to sell is also your ability to understand the changes that are in the marketplace, what people want now as opposed to what they wanted 5 years ago. It's night and day. And if you're not listening to what people are saying and be able to filter out the noise from the real meat of what they're saying, you're going to have a hard time not just selling, but also marketing whatever you're trying to sell. And I'll give you a good example, Mike. If 2 years ago you were selling office space as a leasing agent, at what point in time does it dawn on you that maybe people don't want that and instead want an office built in their house?
Right.
So, okay, yeah. Mike, back to you.
Yeah. The other example I heard, it's adapt or die. And the other example I heard, this was many, many years ago. It was in one of the Middle Eastern conflicts that we had, where they talked about tanks versus helicopters, for example. X number of tanks get destroyed. So does that mean that it's time that a military force needs to order 20 more tanks? Hey, we lost 20 tanks. Let's order 20 more tanks. Or do they realize tanks are no longer the way to go? I need two Apache helicopters. So, it's the whole adapt or die thing. You either embrace what's happening now or you become a dinosaur.
Exactly. And I think for those of you out there that are thinking of starting your own business, it is going into a pond full of sharks and piranhas. And what you need to do is you need to know where they are and how to navigate and how to swim. We talked about setting goals and setting plan, but it all starts with listening to the marketplace. Listening to the marketplace is, as opposed to just listening to yourself or listening to your boyfriend or girlfriend or your parents who are, cheering you on. It's what does the marketplace say? And which means you got to talk to a lot of different people. Talk to them about, they want to buy what you're selling. How would you sell that? How would you sell whatever you're selling to somebody? You're in the real estate market, Mike. Talk to me about how you sell and how it's changed in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to hear your take on this, Mike, because I mean, I've heard you talk about how you've seen good salespeople and bad salespeople. I feel like in our business, and I think this translates to a lot of businesses, we're not selling people. Meaning, I don't show them a house and say, "Oh, you want to buy this house, and let me tell you why you want to buy this house. Look at all the features." It's not like we're talking people into taking action. It's more about identifying the needs, asking questions, listening, and then if we do a great job matching them up with what their needs are, they make the buying decision. Now, yes, there's still skill involved in that, because you're going to run into objections and you still have to know how to handle objections, but it's not about point counterpoint. It's, that turns into a boxing match. If you tell me, well, I don't want to do this because of this reason, and I say, yeah, but that reason doesn't make sense, and let me tell you why. Now we're just arguing, and that's not good sales.
Right. Well, I think one of the things we've talked about on this podcast in the past has been filtering out the dead enders.
Oh,
People
for sure.
I mean, really, there's some people, I don't care how good you are as a salesman. They at the end of the day aren't interested in buying. They're window shopping. They're walking around. They just love the act of window shopping. I've seen this with hiring, where you have people, all they do is look for a job. They don't want a job. They just, somehow it makes them feel better. They're actually looking for a job. But when a job is right in front of them and they can make some money and pay some bills, well, they'll find a reason why not to take that job. And the same thing with people looking to buy a house. I mean, we've talked about this, I think, a year ago, where I was telling you about a family relative who literally would come down to Cleveland and all they did was look at houses on a Saturday, and they never bought anything. They did this for 5 years. Twice a year they'd come down, and some sucker realtor would just drive them around for free. Not only that, but they're eating up gas looking at these properties. And I said, hey, to filter them out, you need to charge for your time, because that separates the people that are serious from the people that aren't. Thoughts?
Yeah. One of my favorite real estate coaches said something really simplistic, but he said, buyers are people who buy. And what he meant was that, yeah, some people take a little longer and they need to be nurtured longer. But one of the things that happened to me earlier in my career, I had these folks, they were just torturous to work with, and I was working them with a teammate. And it's at a certain point, we fired them. We just said, look, this isn't a good fit. We're not going to work together anymore. Sorry. And then my teammate kind of tracked them because they had a unique name. And about a year later, my teammate says, hey, Mike, guess what? These folks bought a house. And I said, okay, that's fine. A year later, could you have dealt with them for a year, and how many hours would you have invested over that year, and would it have been worth it?
Right.
And when he thought about it that way, he kind of saw my point and said, yeah, at the end of the day, is it worth $15 or $20 an hour to work with people who are just torturous and are not a good fit? It's too painful, and it's not worth the payday that comes with it. And they did buy, but I think in the end we were right to part ways with them.
Yeah, in order to sell, you first need to be able to define who the buyer is, recognize who the buyer is.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, you need to ask a lot of questions to get to know that person. Somebody says, I'm looking to buy a house. Okay, what would you ask? What size of house? Are schools important? What's your location? Where you work? I mean, what do you generally do? What the questions you ask, Mike?
Well, we have a whole list of about 20 questions that we go through, but a lot of it we start out with not just, hey, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms? It's more general questions like, oh, why are you moving? And while we're building rapport with people, it really gets down to motivation. So it's more about identifying those proper customers for us.
Right.
So,
Motivation so important.
exactly. Yeah. So if they say, well, if we find the perfect house, maybe we'll move, but only if we get X price for our house that we're going to sell. Well, that's someone who's just looking for a needle in a haystack, and that is probably not a good customer for us. So we want to learn about them, ask them the whys and the whens. Some people are renting. I just talked to a guy yesterday who's in a lease for 6 months. That's great. He's a great buyer, but am I going to show him houses tomorrow? Of course not. I'm wasting his time and mine because he's not ready to buy for about 4 more months.
Right. And, sometimes what happens is with the marketplace, you've got to be creative because not only are you asking questions, but you're trying to fit together a deal that works within the constraints of the marketplace. I'll give you an idea, an example. COVID 2 years ago or last year, when the real estate market was white hot, there was some people out there who really should have been renting to let the market cool off. So if they can, or stay in their house if they can. So here you are, you're not only listening to what they want, but you're becoming more of a problem solver as opposed to a manipulator who's trying to sell them a house. And I think that always goes a long way to build up your brand as a good realtor, like it's going to be for me as a good contractor. When I go in, in the residential contracting side, somebody will say to me, oh, this has happened a lot, especially in the last 20, 30 years. I go out to an estimate and they'd say, well, we need a whole new roof. We need a new roof. Why? Well, we had a leak in the bedroom. Well, the leak wasn't related to the roof. It was related to the fact that they had an ice backup at that corner. So here I am coming in and saying, listen, all you got to do is this. You don't have to do anything else. Well, guess what? They're going to remember me. And if I have other things to sell, they're going to be open to listening to it because now they don't have to spend, $10,000 on a new roof. Now maybe that 10,000 can be deployed, for something else they have to do.
Yep.
But it starts with, you've got to come at it with some integrity. The integrity is, I'm not here to manipulate you. I'm here to help you, but I'm also here to help myself, which means I don't want to waste my time. Okay, if you're not interested in buying. And so gathering that information and trying to figure out what is the problem I have to solve here is going to go a long way to building a better relationship with that person that you're working with. I think what happens a lot of times, Mike, is sales is like a 4-letter word. It connotates manipulation. When in reality, it's the last thing. If you're a good salesman, you're not interested in manipulating them. You want to build a relationship because they're going to tell people like, hey, you want to work with this person. These guys are great. They call back they show up on time. They keep it clean. They get what you pay for.
And Mike, let me tell you, I have a measure of how you know if you're a good salesperson or not, if you've accomplished the mission of what we just talked about, where you are a consultant, an advisor. I think it's all about, or a big chunk of it is education. So kind of like your roof story, or kind of like when I go on a really good appointment, I know I knocked it out of the park when the client says to me these two words, thank you.
Yes.
That's when you're getting manipulated or strong armed into making a decision, a purchase decision. Nobody ever thanks you. So if you're not hearing thank yous when you're selling, then you're probably doing it wrong. It's like that roof customer of yours probably looked at you and said, "Wow, thank you. You just saved me $10,000, and I understand now I don't need a new roof for 5 more years." So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the words you want to hear if you're doing it right.
Here's another little interesting tip is don't start off in your sales session with somebody where you hand them a card. Let them ask you for the card when it's all done, because that is another form of validation. I mean, they want your card now. I mean, I don't want to forget this guy's name or number. Okay. And so what happens is, don't lead off with the brochure. Don't lead off with a card. Get out the legal pad and start taking notes, asking questions, take notes, let them talk, because I don't know anybody who doesn't appreciate being listened to. Okay. I mean, it is so rare these days. Most of the time, people just have their own script to follow, their own agenda to follow. I mean, they're not, you call up somebody in the tech help and whatever, it's rare when you meet somebody who's actually listening to you as opposed to working off a script.
Yeah, being on the other end of that is the worst. And I'll tell you another barometer of whether or not you're good at this is measure the amount of time that you talk versus the amount of time that your customer talks. It should be 50-50 or less. You should be speaking less than they are, because they're the ones who should be doing the talking. They're telling you what they need.
Right. And be curious on your questions. Don't be formulaic. And I get, I'm a very talkative guy. I mean, that's why I have all these different podcasts and stuff, but I got to discipline myself to ask questions and build on those questions so I get a fuller fuller look at the picture. It's almost like every question is a puzzle piece. You're putting it in, and then you start seeing, oh, this is a puzzle about a boat or a house or a lake or an ocean or a mountain. You start putting these puzzle pieces in. Those are all the answers to the question. And the curiosity comes with you being genuinely curious about, well, why do you want to redo the kitchen? Are you getting ready to sell, or what? But let them talk. And a lot of times they think, well, you know what? I just feel like we need to put a new kitchen in because we're going to be selling the house next year, and kitchen, needs to be updated. And I'm looking at the kitchen floor, and I'm thinking, I'm telling them, I said, the only thing that needs to be updated is the floor. Okay, just make it clean so people can come in. They can walk right in. They've got the space. You got the neighborhood, and this is what they want. So you're asking questions, you're getting answers, and don't hesitate to, give your opinion, because they're looking for you for guidance. Thoughts?
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Yeah, you're the expert. We should be driving the bus. It drives me crazy in my business how agents will just be silent. They're afraid to rock the boat. And Mike, hearing us, you talk about this and the things I'm chiming in, we love our book recommendations, right? So I got one for everybody. Phil Jones, the book is called Exactly What to Say. And he's a big proponent of the asking questions methodology of selling. It's a great one. Get it on book on tape, audio book. It's a real easy listen. Plus he's got a British accent, so that makes it entertaining too.
Well, that is if you can understand him. So right. Phil Jones, what's the title again?
Exactly what to say. It's a sales book. It's not unique to real estate. It's
Yeah.
any business, any salesperson. It's a great read and it's an easy read.
Yeah. And you know what? Again, my pet peeve here, I got 3 kids who are all post-college, but high school, college, no sales course. No sales course is even a requirement. And yet and you know why they don't do it? Because there is a bias against sales. Again, the connotation that it's manipulative.
Right.
And yet, if you called it, instead of sales 101, listening 101, problem solving, listening and problem solving 201, and built it up so you have different levels of this, people would look at it differently. Or bias 301, how do you eliminate your biases? I was fascinated years ago when Jeremy Linsanity, you're a basketball player, Mike. Here was a guy who was California Player of the Year. California Player of the Year in Division II in high school. And yet Stanford wasn't even interested in talking to him, even though he lived in Palo Alto, because he was Asian American. And there was a bias against that. There is a bias against people. You go over and talk to people and they're, maybe they're not wearing gold necklaces or dressed sharp or driving a, Mercedes Benz or something. And they look at these people and say, well, this guy obviously doesn't have money. Or the guy who's got a 3-piece suit and driving a very expensive luxury car. And they're thinking, well, this guy must have a lot of money. Those are biases. Black customer coming up, okay, where are your biases? When people say prejudiced or racist, really it's code for bias. And really that limits you in terms of your understanding of human nature, because people are shades of gray. They're not white or black, man or woman, gay or straight. They're human beings. And your ability to wash your biases out. Now, here's the thing. There's a difference between having biases like that and having a database where you can ask some questions and quickly realize this is not a buyer. There's a real difference between the two, but you have to start out with a clean slate and then ask the right questions. Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. There's a great real estate coach by the name of Terry Watson, and he happens to be African American, and one of the things that he talks about in his coaching classes is, look, there's only one color you all should care about, and that's green.
Exactly.
Because ultimately salespeople are typically compensated based on production, so there's nothing wrong with being motivated by money. I think that's another one of those negative sort of things that make people think negatively of sales is, all salespeople are just money grubbers. They only care about money.
Well, they
that's
do.
Not true.
Exactly. They do care about money.
Look,
I'm not here to waste my time. Time is money. But I'm on the other hand, I'm not going to violate my integrity over money.
And it's one of the few jobs, because we talk about the benefits of being self-employed, but sales is one of the few jobs where the harder you work, the more money you make. And that's, one of the things we talk about when we talk about being self-employed. That is a benefit of being self-employed. The better your company does, the more income potential you have. But the beauty of sales is that you have some of that as well.
Right. And here's where it's important that you work hard. But you have to define what that work is. It's not making endless sales calls. Look at Mike. I've been all over your ass the last couple of weeks because, you've done a great job working with us the last 10 plus years, with sales. But how do they get my cell phone number when these people are calling? These realtors are calling me because we pulled the house off the market. It's like I just left the garage open and there's a bag of garbage there that isn't closed up and the flies are just buzzing around. Now, my point is, here are these realtors calling me, and I got to ask myself, isn't there a better way of getting a lead than this? These people are working hard. And I remember talking to one guy a couple of days ago. I said, is this actually getting you anything besides people hanging up on you?
What do you say?
I get, first of all, he was taken aback that I was actually engaging him in a question he wasn't prepared for. You know, it was a total curveball coming his way. And the other guy, after a pretty stressful morning, I'm in the middle of a Zoom and I get a phone call from another realtor, and I just unloaded on the guy. I just said, I am so sick of these calls. And I just let him have it. But my point is, hey, everybody, you want to work hard? Okay, great. But don't pound your head against the wall. Don't be doing something stupid, because the work involves actually thinking about what you're doing, not just mindlessly doing it. And that is why a sales class or 2 or 3 or Dale Carnegie class is critical to your success. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing is, these phone calls that people are making, it's a lot of just mindless rolling the boulder up the hill. So, hey, you want to sell your house? I see your house didn't sell. You want to sell it. Instead of taking that approach, whether it's selling real estate or anything, it's how can you provide value? So identify the problem and solve it. Identify the value. That's where I think a lot of salespeople come short. And giving value, it's different than trying to sell something. It's, what can I give you? What can I provide for you that you're going to find valuable, that's going to make you want to work with me? Instead of the approach that they're taking is, what can you give me? And that's the wrong approach, I think.
Right. And I think if you want to get, let's say you're out there, you're, a young guy, a young person in college. Okay. All right. I want to work for myself. What do I do? Well, why don't you go around and knock on doors in your neighborhood and just say to somebody, hey, listen, I don't want to, I'm working for myself this summer. I charge $20 an hour. What do you need? Is there anything you need? Do you need your windows washed? Do you need, lawn cleanup? Whatever. I guarantee you, in this market, you will spend, 4 hours, maybe talk to 20 people, and at least 10 will have some work for you. At least 10. They'd be tripping over. They'd be calling up their mother. Oh, hey, mom, guess what? This young kid just knocked on my door. People are just looking for somebody to do this work. And if you're not a good salesman, you're not going to see what's right in front of you. Let's get back to that real estate, those people that are calling. Hey, how come your house didn't sell? You want to get somebody who can really sell it, as opposed to, you know what, I hate to bother you, but I'm just curious as to why your house didn't sell. Did you take it off the market? Or maybe, how about you do this? How about figuring out, before you make that phone call, how about doing a little due diligence and doing a little background or homework on this person? Do they own a bunch of properties? Do they, what is that? Who exactly am I calling before I actually talk to them? How about a little background, little homework you do before you make that phone call?
Yeah, we do it all the time. It's something called circle prospecting. And when we sell a home in a particular neighborhood, for example, we know that let's just say there were 20 buyers interested in that home and only one person got it. That means there's 19 other buyers who did not buy that home but are interested in being in that neighborhood. So one of our approaches is, hey, we noticed maybe you've been in your home for 5 years or more, or maybe your home was on the market in the past. We just sold 123 Banana Street. We have 19 other buyers who didn't buy that home who might be interested.
You know what we've been talking about, and we're going to end on this note, the most important note of all. We've been talking about listening. We're talking about taking notes. We're talking about actually using your think muscle, because remember, those ears are connected to your brain. Okay, so you're actually the stuff's coming in. You're supposed to be thinking about what's coming in your ears and processing that. Okay, so you're taking notes. You're asking yourself, is this approach right or wrong? Am I getting a lot of hangups? Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Did I spend all day knocking on doors and get nowhere? So there's got to be an evolution going on here. What's working? What's not? Am I selling it the right way? Does anybody want this product that I'm selling? But the most important thing, the payoff, is the close. The close. And the close is not manipulating them into, yes, buy my product. The close is getting you that feedback. Okay? Don't break my heart. Tell me, is this something is genuinely you're interested in doing? If they say no, ask them why. Because that feedback is going to tell you a lot. If you got 20 people you're selling and you're trying to sell this, this great widget that you thought everybody's going to buy, and you got 20 people say, hey, I'm really not that interested in it. That's telling you something, but you're never going to get that answer unless you ask for the sale. Right?
Feedback, and ask for feedback. And that's why we track and measure, Mike. And I know whenever we talk about that, people go, oh, track and measure, blah, blah, blah. But no, it's important. You need to know, how many calls did you make? How many people did you talk to? And what were the results? Track and measure.
And we would have people call. We have in our contracting business, as well as our property business, the first thing we always look for is the source. How did they hear about us? The strongest source is repeat. The weakest source is they found us on Google.
Mm-hmm.
And so right away, when the source is Google, then you're going to start asking some specific questions connected to that source to find out if they're a buyer. I don't want to know whether you're rich or poor, black or white, man or female, gay or straight. I don't want to know that. But you're calling me because you got me on Google. Okay, tell me, what is it that you want? Okay. And then I'm going to listen. And then my first hoop that I got to go through, is this person worth selling to? Okay. So final thoughts, Mike.
I was waiting for, final thoughts. I got a final thought for you. Something we didn't hit. And just real quick here, I think it's really important to remember that not just your salespeople in your organization are in sales. I would argue that everyone in your organization needs to have sales skills. And if you translate that, everyone in your organization needs to have listening skills. So whether it's the person who answers the phone, whether it's your foreman, your Erics of the world who are out there doing the job and running the job, he's in sales, because based on the experience your customers have with that person who is the face of your company, that's going to dictate whether or not you get future business and referrals. So everybody's in sales.
Well, let me just see you and raise you one final thought, which is this. To me, a sales class is like reading and writing. Okay? It is critical, regardless if you're a salesman or not. I mean, if you're working for a company, if you're in a marriage, if you're a parent, you have to be able to listen to what that person's saying. Okay? What does your boss want? What's your wife want? What do they really want? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean what they want you can give, but at least you know what they want. And I have found that they say this when you're arguing. Say you're marriage counseling. Acknowledge what the person is saying. Okay? That is sales 101.
Yep.
Okay? Yeah, I know you want to get a 12-bedroom mansion with 6 bathrooms, but you can't have it unless you're going to have to spend more than $500,000, right? Okay? Yeah. I mean, you're acknowledging what they're saying. I'm reflecting it back, but no, it's not going to work. This is a waste of time. Okay?
Another little saying, Mike, that I have for people is you You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. They should be used in that proportion.
And it's connected to your brain. So
That's
get
right.
all three working in concert. Okay, Mike, listen, you got to get going. I know you got to, you got to put the apron on and hobble over to the kitchen and make and get that dinner going for your wife who's starving by 5 o'clock. Right.
That's right. This was such good stuff today, Mike. I think we hit a home run today. I can't wait to hear it on the podcast.
Well, we're gonna have to bring our Alex back. He's gonna add some flavor too. All right, everybody, time's up. We'll pick this up next week. Thanks, Mike.
Yep. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Riley. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.